and welcome to the Football Hipsters Satchel edition. That means it's a Thursday, and we're back again. I am your host, Kris. I'm joined, as always, for the Satchel by Mr. John Welsh. Good evening to you, John.
Evening, Kris.
We're back as usual, as I said, to discuss on our Satchel edition. We discuss the Champions League and the Europa League games of the past 72 hours, as it is now. We're recording this live on a Thursday evening, so hopefully this won't be out of date by the time you get round to listening to it. So let's not waste any time. Let's crack on straight into the action. We'll start as we do in numerical order or fixture order, whichever way we want to put it. We started on Tuesday. Two early fixtures. Bate Borisov in the Champions League. This is drew with Leverkusen in Group E, a 1-1 draw, and in Group H, Zenit St. Petersburg keeping up their incredible form, really, beating Valencia by 2-0. John, in the first game, only really one highlight. I'm sure Bate would say differently. Probably a low light for Leverkusen's Bernd Leno. A little bit of a goalkeeping gaffe. Do you rate him very highly?
He's a decent keeper, and there's quite a lot in Germany that are very good and highly rated. A lot of competition to try and get that sort of place on the bench to Manuel Neuer, because obviously no one's displacing him at the moment. But not one he's going to look fondly on that performance.
No, Kevin Trapp, one of the other sort of opponents to Neuer's throne. He didn't have a particularly good game earlier on the Champions League either, dropping one in at Madrid. So, not a great day for Bernd Leno. But as I say, Bate drawing Leverkusen coming from behind, goal from Kalim Bellarabi, a nice little sort of dink that just dropped in the far post for an equaliser. So that was the early game there. And as you say, Zenit dispatching Valencia. But the two games I really want to touch on in both those groups really were the evening games. Let's start in France. Lyon, really in a must-win situation, not for Champions League football, but even to get Europa League football. And they failed spectacularly. They did go in front, but ended up losing the game 2-1 to Belgian side Ghent. John, what do you think's the likelihood now of Ghent potentially causing a massive upset and actually coming through to that in that group, or indeed in Europa League football at the very least?
Well, they've given themselves a really good chance. I think they're definitely guaranteed Europa League at least, aren't they? And I think they've just gone above Valencia. They're really impressed. Lyon, however, were just, awful, so bad, and it was an amazing performance when you consider they are currently second in Ligue 1 as
they
well?
are, yeah. Although by default a little bit. But...
Well, yeah, maybe, but it's amazing when a team can be second in their league, albeit to a PSG team, but be so bad in the Champions League. I mean, they had so many attempts to score a goal, but were just woeful in front of it. And Ghent, you really have to commend, because they're a team that were pretty much expected to finish rock bottom of that group.
Yeah, absolutely. And a game that Lyon had to win, interestingly, they dropped Claudio Bovu, who's one of their forward sort of goal-getters, and brought in Ghazal, and that didn't really work. And in the end, they ended up bringing Bovu and Cornet on, just couldn't score the goal. So they went one up, but equalised. I don't know if you caught... Did you catch the free kick that equalised for Ghent? Did you see that?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah, talk our listeners through that if they haven't seen that.
I'm just trying to remember who put the ball in now.
I can fill you in if tweak your memory.
If you could tweak my memory, because I remember seeing it, but I must admit I do not remember the names of all the players.
It was Milicevic who scored the goal direct from the free kick. But essentially, what happens is there's three Ghent players with their backs to the Lyon goal in front of the ball. So as the free kick is in front, looking at the goal, they're actually stood in front of the ball's path. And then just before Milicevic goes to kick it, you can see him clearly with his hands over his mouth, and he's telling the various three players around him what's going to happen. And as he approaches the ball, they all split in three different ways, which, from the outset, you wouldn't think it would confuse anyone. But Milicevic then absolutely whips through the back of the ball and curls it in behind the wall and into the net. Lopez didn't really have any chance. It was really, really worth a look just for the sheer sort of cheek of it and difference, I suppose, because you see so many direct free kicks with just jump, a wall and whatnot, but with the three players in effect from his own side in the way, it's a really, really clever free kick. So it's well worth a look. But
the thing that always confuses me about those sort of free kicks is because he put it so well around the wall anyway.
Yeah,
Would it have made any difference whether those three players are there? If he'd just done exactly the same shot, would he still not have scored?
probably.
Not that the
Yeah,
three players didn't distract, obviously, but
probably. I think the only thing I could think that is a massive advantage is the way those three players broke. If anything came back off the goalkeeper, they were the first three for the rebound. Perhaps
yeah,
maybe that's or even maybe it just prevents like the wall from jumping. That it just sort of if they catch their eye, they jump slightly less high than they would normally, maybe. But it's an interesting one. I don't think you could have missed Ghent in that kit. It's quite a loud one. I think it's fair to say. Their late goal was well assisted by Milicevic and headed in by Koulibaly at the second attempt in the 95th minute. So literally the last kick of the game, and that is the Stade Gerland's final European fixture, as Lyon have gone out of Europe completely.
it's a bit of a whimper, really, for their last performance
It
in the
is.
stadium.
Yeah, it really is, and question marks will now, no doubt, be raised again about the futures of a certain Lacazette. So we shall see what happens there, and indeed, possibly Herbert Fournier, the coach. But yeah, so that's Lyon gone. Moving on then, as I say, again, keep an eye on them. They're worth a watch. But later on that evening in the group, or next group down, which was the Group E, we had Barcelona 6, Roma 1. Where shall we start on this one? What just give us your thoughts on Barcelona and how good they are, and indeed how much pressure Rudy Garcia is under at Roma.
It was just an obscene performance. It was literally pick. It was more of a guess how many goals Barcelona wanted to score. They seem to have so many shots. The weirdest thing is they never hit the post once, I don't think, in the entire game, which was really bizarre out of the amount of attempts they had. I mean, they could have had 12 quite easily. They just completely outclassed Roma. They were a level above. As for Rudy Garcia, despite the fact that Roma are doing so well in Serie A, he's still under massive pressure. The owner of Roma really is sort of focused on Europe, and that's where he wants the team to perform. So there is a huge amount of pressure on him, and there's still talk of him being replaced, possibly even before the season's ending. So this result will certainly not help, especially considering what happened last season when they lost to Bayern Munich. I think it was 8-0. I think that was at the Stadio Olimpico as well. And their season really did fall to bits after that. So you wonder if they can sort of recover psychologically from such a performance. Some great headlines back in Italy as well. I don't know the Italian for it, but the headline basically translated as "beaten by aliens" to try and describe Barcelona's performance, which I think has been used by the Italians more than one time when describing Barcelona's play.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some comments from the on-loan Arsenal keeper Wojciech Szczesny as well, where he said that it was a joy to watch. Interesting.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the weird thing is that Szczesny actually had a very good game.
He's their best player, wasn't he?
Yeah, if it wasn't for Szczesny, it would have been a higher goal scoreline. So yeah, probably not the sort of thing you want to hear from your goalkeeper, but there wasn't a lot more for him to say other than that.
No, I agree. Did you see I'm sure you saw the goals, but the Suarez volley was probably the pick of them. That was,
oh yeah. Just...
wow. I mean, this guy is well. I think he's finding the form that he had just the season he left Liverpool.
Yeah, the really interesting thing is that front three, they all look like they enjoy playing together.
Yeah.
They're all laughing, smiling, always talking together. They all go to celebrate with each other.
Yeah.
Which I think there was a question mark when Suarez first come in, how it would work and what flexibility, but you saw how Messi was quite happy to go, no, I'll go and play on the right and we'll let Lewis up front, and that's how we get the best out of the team.
Yeah.
So that just shows how much of a connection they've got, and it's just terrifying for any defence to have to face any one of those three, let alone all three of them together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's apparently being described as MSN, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. That's the new look. But yeah, the only thing I would say with Neymar, penalty taking, not his strong point. I think it's fair to say I never liked his run-ups at Santos, and I still don't like them at Barca. It's this one-run, sort of one-step kind of technique. It just doesn't like it. But when you've got not Andre Correa, it was Adriano, wasn't it, who smashed in the rebound when he missed his head. So yeah, I suppose when you're 5-0 up, that's the time to try those. But I think it's fair to say Barcelona are looking pretty ominous in that game. Let's move it on then to Group F. This is a group which Bayern Munich, will start with them. 4-0 winners at home to Olympiacos, even though they had 10 men, Holger Badstuber being sent off late on. They just march on, don't they? They just look like I think the last 7 results have been 4 goals or more at home. Olympiacos were just blown away, weren't they?
Yeah, just again another team that are just on another level compared to anyone else in the competition. I think it's quite clear that Bayern and Barcelona are the 2 best teams in the competition right now, and they're both in great form. Yeah, I think it's 4-0, 5-1, 5-0, something like that. Their last run of, or however many results it is at home now. I think the last, probably over a year or something stupid like that. But they just, even with 10 men, they're 2-0 up, go down to 10 men, and then score another 2 goals. They've just got depth in all sorts of positions. Every single player is a real ball player. Jerome Boateng is becoming probably the best defender in Europe. Not just in terms of defending, the fact that he can bring the ball out, he can shoot, he can pass, just everything about him. And then when you add the players in front of him, and someone like Douglas Costa who's fitted into the side so well, it makes them a real force.
Yeah, absolutely. And that result in Munich left Arsenal knowing what they had to do. Basically, they needed Olympiacos to lose to have any chance of qualification, and they did their job. A 3-0 win at home to Dynamo Zagreb, which I think it's fair to say was expected. But Mesut Ozil, once again, was the star of the show, really shone, scoring in the game and generally looking extremely impressive. This group now all hinges on the final group game. Tight, would you suggest? I mean, obviously people know our allegiances, but it really could go Arsenal or Olympiacos on the final day.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's necessarily the way anyone thought the group would go. I think most people had Bayern Munich nailed on to group winners, but I think everyone would have picked Arsenal as the team to come second in the group. But leaving it late, making it dramatic, so it'll make for a good game anyway for a neutral. Certainly won't be for me watching it, but
no, same.
Yeah. My blood pressure will be through the roof, no doubt. But the game itself against Zagreb was fairly comfortable. I think 3-0 is a pretty convincing scoreline, and as good as Arsenal were, and they were excellent in plays, they really probably could have played at sort of half the tempo and still won the game. What it highlights is how badly we played in the previous group games.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That will certainly be interesting to watch the last game of the group stage. There's a couple of games that are in a similar position. That moves us nicely, actually. A nice segue into Group G, which is Porto, Kiev, Maccabi Tel Aviv, and Chelsea. With the Chelsea game, not a lot to cover in truth. Chelsea went away from home. I think the downside to them is they picked up injuries to both John Terry and Ramirez, I think it was. Jose Mourinho saying the pitch wasn't up to standard there. But Chelsea coming away with a fairly impressive 4-0 win, albeit with Maccabi having Tal Ben Haim sent off against his former club. That puts them in a fairly decent position in the group. But the real surprise of the night was Porto losing at home to Dynamo Kiev. Iker Casillas didn't have the best of evenings, did he?
No, another goalkeeper having a bad night, and one of his quality as well. There was, I can't remember what paper it was now, but there was talk of Jose Mourinho laughing slightly on poor Iker Casillas, as I'm sure most people know. They didn't have the greatest ending to their working career together, but really just poor performance from him. But Porto all round, just not good enough, and impressive from Kiev. Goal from Yarmolenko, obviously. I think that was the penalty he scored. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. But Kiev very impressive, and trying to give themselves a chance to get through to the next stage.
Yeah, absolutely. They really impressed me, actually. Really, really impressed me. They're one of those sides that you generally would associate as not travelling well, but they travelled well that night. And although it's not the strongest of Porto sides in recent years, they're still, they're still one of the favourites to progress from that group.
Porto at home is traditionally a very difficult game. But I was surprised by Kiev, but impressive performance. The Chelsea game was fairly comfortable cruising, obviously, and Maccabi being down to 10 men. A really stupid challenge by Tal Ben Haim. Just absolutely no attempt to win the ball, and just thought, no, I'll just wipe out Diego Costa, kick him as hard as I can from behind, and straight red.
Don't think he'll be the last to do that to Mr. Costa.
No, probably not. One good stat actually from that is the Willian scoring yet again from a free kick.
Is it 4 free kicks in the Champions League this season alone, I think?
No, I think it's more than it's 4 in the Champions League alone. I think it's 6 in total for the season.
Crikey, yeah.
So he's just got that wicked delivery where even if a player doesn't get on the end of it, it's going to go in. He just puts it in that horrible position for the goalkeeper where you don't know whether to come or not. And really, one of their few shining lights so far this season.
Goalkeeper gave up on it, certainly, as he was hit. I think he knew it was in, so
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next group then. We should stress, we'll come back to the tables at the end just to give everybody a heads up on where the tables are, but we'll move into Group C, the game between Astana and Benfica on Wednesday. It was another one of the early kickoffs. Astana taking a 2-goal lead in that game. Would it be fair to say against against most people's predictions? I think it's probably fair. They had Tuamasi, their African forward, who got sort of finally back in the side after being out from suspension, and he put them in front. And then I think it's Anicic who got the second, and Astana seemed to have the opportunity of qualification, but 2 goals from the Mexican Raul Jimenez on loan from Atletico got Benfica back in the game. Benfica, fair to say it's not a vintage side, but would you suggest that this result will be enough for them heading into the final game?
You would think so. Benfica traditionally, again, don't travel great, but Astana, despite being 2 up, I think they would still be happy with the point. It's their first time in the competition, and they celebrated a draw earlier in the competition at home to Atletico, which might be slightly more impressive, but they celebrated that like it was winning a trophy. So good first showing for them, and first team from Kazakhstan. So impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. That result, of course, gets them. I shouldn't say that it doesn't qualify them, because they are qualified. It's more of a battle for who gets top spot now, because they will battle it out with Atletico Madrid, who dumped out Galatasaray, winning by 2-0 later on in the evening. 2 goals from Antoine Griezmann, who's definitely starting to put a few quid on his price tag, and his reputation is growing ever more by the week. So good performance from him and Atletico. So that is a shootout in the final game now between those top two, see who will qualify first. Let's have a look at Group B. Early kickoff, Moscow 0, Wolfsburg 2. There's a pattern developing here. But the first goal was another terrible goalkeeping error. I think it's Igor Akinfeev, I think he's got the record of never being able to keep a clean sheet in the Champions League. I think I'm right in saying.
Not a great record to have.
No, and do look up the goal from Schürrle. The first goal, I think the shot, is fair to say, was going across the goal. Akinfeev kind of palmed it downwards behind him into his own net. It was a real blunder. And then with time running out, Sebastian Jung's cross was met by the aforementioned Schürrle to make it 2-0. And Wolfsburg came away with a good result for them heading into the final game. But we should touch on the other game in that group later on in that evening. What did you make of Manchester United? Obviously, there's a lot of their fans are very disgruntled. There's a lot of disharmony in the camp, suggestion that players are starting to question the manager's sort of methods. It was a bit of a mess in the 0-0 draw with PSV, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest performance. I thought at the weekend in the Premier League they looked like they'd started to turn it round a bit and were playing slightly faster and a bit more exciting, but a lot of that was down to Ander Herrera, who was sadly for United only on the pitch for I think something like 30 minutes after having to come off injured, and you could see him missing in the midfield tonight. From Wednesday's game. So it was just very slow and ponderous, and it's a lot of things that have been said about United already this season. That the one thing you will say with United, as again has been all season, is that their defence has been fantastic. I think they haven't conceded in something like 11 hours now, which really is impressive. But a lot of complaining the fact that someone like Juan Mata, who can open up a team, doesn't come on until sort of the last 5 minutes of the game, whereas Marouane Fellaini comes on in the 60th minute. It's interesting to see what's going to happen with Man United this season, because you cannot discount them from any of the competitions they're in at the moment whilst the defence is so good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I wonder if maybe it highlights just how poor the Premier League is this season, given the fact that they're well in contention at the top of the Premier League, but are really struggling at the top level. So, Champions League-wise, that'll be, as you say, interesting to look at. That group is a real close one. We'll cover that in a second. 2 groups left to go then. It was Zlatan Day, or Zlatan Evening in Sweden. Sadly not for Malmo, who were taken apart by 5-0 by PSG. Adlem Rabiot scoring the first. Angel Di Maria with a brace, a late, quite real quality free kick actually from Lucas, and the big man himself, Zlatan, getting the goal that he didn't celebrate. Interestingly, he just sort of had a quiet moment with his teammates after the goal and sort of drank in the atmosphere. This is the Zlatan, of course, who started his career at Malmo and paid for the square to be rented out in his honour for the game, so people could watch it on the big screen. So never one to put it all about him, of course, big Zlatan. But I want to ask you, John. I mean, I've been a bit cheeky in suggesting that a French club could win the Champions League, and I think PSG are the only hope of that. Yes, it's Malmo. Yes, they did miss a penalty late on, but 5-0, that they should probably have beaten Real Madrid in the Bernabeu, albeit an average or slightly average-looking Real Madrid side this season. Do you think PSG have got the necessary tools to potentially go all the way?
I think they've got the players. The problem is, I think it's after their first 11, there isn't enough after that. If you lose someone like Blaise Matuidi, or if they lose Zlatan, or Lucas, who's come back really well this season, I think then they're going to struggle. But obviously Rabiot's been playing better now for them. But I think that midfield three, when the first choice three is fit, then yeah, it can compete with most of the teams in Europe. It's just that depth where you look at Barcelona or Bayern Munich, they've got those added players that they can bring off the bench or swap out if they need to rotate. And I don't think PSG have that. They obviously have the advantage that their league is basically sewn up and it's not even Christmas yet. So maybe they don't have to push themselves as much. They can save themselves for the Champions League. But then it's a question of getting yourself excited and G'd up for a competition after you've basically been going and beating teams for fun every weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be the biggest test, and obviously they improved last year. Beating Chelsea was no mean feat last season, so I think they're definitely on the up. It'll be interesting to see how well they get on, and depending on who they draw. What about the action in the Lviv Stadium in the Ukraine? Do you want to tell us a bit about that game?
Yeah, it looked interesting. It was always going to be interesting after the Classico at the weekend to see how Madrid would bounce back from being beaten 4-0. All started fine. Looked at the lineup, changed slightly. It looked more like the team that Benitez has wanted to play. He sort of came out and said, "This is my team. This is the way I want them to play. This is the 11 that I would pick." I mean, obviously the fact Benzema was only on the bench was obviously coming back from not necessarily injury, but other things going on in his life at the moment. But all going well, perfectly fine, 4-0, and then just sort of 15 minutes of complete madness and Real Madrid forgetting how to defend and Shakhtar turning it on and scoring 3 goals and nearly snatching a draw out of a game that should have been completely sewn up. It was unbelievable.
It really was a real picture book goal from Danny Carvajal in that game as well. The sort of chip across the keeper at the back post, really, really good goal. And apparently some love between Cristiano and Gareth Bale. I'm not buying it myself.
Yeah, that looked a little bit put on, I must say. The celebrating on the floor with each other. Yeah,
it did look a little bit rehearsed, didn't it? A bit of a PR stunt maybe. And Gareth, sort the hair out, mate. It's not working. Okay, let's leave that group behind then. We'll finish up with Group D, which I know you've been keeping quite a close eye on. How did your boys get on? It was a bit of a crazy game, wasn't it? The Mönchengladbach-Sevilla game?
Yeah, it was a great game to watch if you're a Gladbach fan. Probably not as good if you're a Seville fan. It was mostly Gladbach first half. Seville didn't really turn up. Their one shining light was, I was about to say Yarmolenko, but I mean Konoplyanka. I always get those two mixed up. That's terrible. He was their sort of one standout player from the first half because the rest of the team really didn't turn up, other than perhaps their goalkeeper Sergio Rico. But went in front. Lars Stindl got on the end of a sort of cross-come shot from Granit Xhaka, who is having great fun kicking lumps into Gregor Krychowiak in midfield. That was a good battle to watch. And then basically Gladbach from there, second half, just did what they've been good at previously under Lucien Favre and again under André Schubert when they get one goal in front, being able to sit deep and then breaking fast and getting to 3-0. Seville get a goal back. Gladbach then immediately reply, go up the other end and score again. And then Seville players start losing their head. There's a lot of arguments, sort of 5 minutes where the ref kind of loses control. We're not really sure what's going on. Granit Xhaka does the terrible thing which might possibly stop him from ever reaching the top level of constantly arguing with referees and linesmen and then lashing out
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so it finishes the game 4-2 over Banega scoring for the penalty spot. But a great game for Gladbach, and just they continue this great run. It was almost a bit of revenge for the way they'd performed so badly in the reverse fixture early in the campaign, and there's sort of now these question marks of where could have Gladbach been in the competition had they started the season in the sort of form they're in now.
Indeed, with the manager they've got now as well. Yeah, interesting. I can confirm as well, as a huge admirer of Grzegorz Krychowiak, I think Granit Xhaka's foul was probably in the sheer shock of Gregor's doing a step over and cutting inside two men with a bit of pace. I don't think
I've
anyone
never
expected
seen
that.
him do that. Yeah, no. Granit Xhaka did not like the fact that he did a bit of skill and took it past him. He was having none of that, and severely booted him as hard as he could as he ran through.
Yeah, absolutely. The other game in that group, of course, Juventus getting a 1-0 victory over Manchester City, a goal from Mario Mandzukic in a game that probably deserved more goals. In truth, it was a sort of low-scoring affair. Manchester City having sort of injury worries as well in that game. Joe Hart coming off, be a concern for them ahead of their Premier League programme. But it was more of a battle for who could potentially finish top. I think Juve on the night were probably the best side. Paul Pogba having one of those nights where he just did lots of very pretty things in very nice ways, and he's just an absolute joy to watch when he's in that form. So that kind of ties up.
Juventus yet again. Sorry, I was just going to say they really gave Manchester City a lesson yet again in how to play European football. They did it in the away leg where when they went 1-0 down, they were calm and just carried on in the game and came back into it. And again, in Wednesday's game, just sat there, were very calm, got the goal, and just played the game out, and just didn't let City do what they wanted to do in the game. Something that this City team really needs to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a learning process that really you'd like to. Well, you would have thought they'd have got the hang of by now, but apparently not. So let's see where all the groups stand as we go, or heading into the final match. So we'll do them in numerical order, as it were. So Group A, you've got Real Madrid are top and qualified on 13 points. PSG second and qualified on 10 points. The final game in that group is we've got Real Madrid at home to Malmo, PSG at home to Shakhtar. You'd probably expect those two to go through in those two positions. Group B, you've got the top place Wolfsburg currently on 9 points, Manchester United in second place on 8 points, PSV on 7 points in third spot. If I was to put a gun to your head, who of the three of those do you fancy to go through from the final set of fixtures, which are Wolfsburg at home to United and PSV at home to CSKA?
It's really hard to call because Wolfsburg's home record is fantastic. The fact they actually won away is quite impressive because their away form has been pretty poor this season. So it's really difficult to know. But I think it's PSV are at home, are they?
Yeah,
they are at home. So I'd say Wolfsburg would be one, but I really wouldn't be able to call the other. Because you just never know with this Manchester United team, because you've seen players like Martial and Lingard come into the team, whether being bought or from the youth team, and they've performed on nights when they've needed them. And as bad as, say, someone like Wayne Rooney has been this season, you know that he's got that ability to win a game when it matters, and he's done it before for United. So you can never count them out. So it's just a really hard group to call, but it'll be a great last round of group games for that group, definitely.
Yeah, and just to clarify, if Wolfsburg win and PSV win, they will go through. So they're both in their own hands. United are going to have to get a result in Germany and hope things go their way elsewhere. So that'll be interesting. Group C, Atletico Madrid and Benfica both qualified, as we mentioned earlier. They play each other in the final group game to see who will finish top. So that one's nice and easy. Group D, you got Juventus are qualified, and Manchester City also qualified in second, 11 points for Juventus, 9 for Man City. Final group games in that, Man City at home to John's Gladbach. Gladbach would probably still like to try and get something from that game in order to secure or cement their Europa League place. And obviously Manchester City still in a straight shootout with Juventus for top spot. Juve away in Sevilla in the final game. Group E, Barcelona through 13 points from their 5 games, and they are clear in Group E. They've won the group and qualified. Roma, despite getting an absolute tonking, are still currently in second, but they're joint second. Leverkusen on 5 points also. Both can still qualify, but interestingly, Bate Borisov can actually still qualify. I think it's going to be an uphill task, but they're away to Roma in the final group game, and Leverkusen are at home to Barca. So that one could ultimately come down to head-to-heads, couldn't it? And I think, was it Leverkusen 4-4, wasn't it, with Roma?
Yeah, I mean, you would think, despite the fact Barca are qualified, that they would still go away and beat Leverkusen. So you would assume that the winner of the Roma Bate game would probably come in second. So you would probably still back Roma at the moment to finish second in the group. But you just don't know, because you saw what the effect of them getting absolutely spanked last season by Bayern Munich had on them. So whether this Barca game has the same effect, we shall have to wait and see.
Yeah, I've got a sneaky feeling that the Leverkusen might come through that. You just never know. It'll be interesting, that one. Group F, you got Bayern Munich qualified at top place with 12 points. They're through. They've won the group. And then it's a straight shootout between Olympiacos and Arsenal. Arsenal needing to win by 2 clear goals away in Olympiacos. I think there is some kind of permutation that says they can go through by scoring less, but I can't remember how it works. So let's just stick to it. They have to win by 2 clear goals.
I think it's 2-0 or 2 clear goals, or if it's 3-2, which is the score that we had against them, then it might go to goal difference. It then gets very, very confusing.
Yes, or indeed 4-3, 5-4, 6-5, etc. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. And Olympiacos host Arsenal, and Bayern Munich will have their comfy slippers on as they go to Zagreb. I'm pretty sure they'll play a scratch side there. So they are through. And the final 2 groups, Group H, another interesting one. This one, Chelsea on top with Porto, both on 10 points. Dynamo Kiev, though, in third on 8 points, can still qualify. Maccabi Tel Aviv, played 5, lost 5. They are gone. Final match day sees Dynamo Kiev host Tel Aviv. So you'd expect them probably to pick up the result there, which means it's Chelsea at home to Porto in a straight shootout for first or second place. So that will be an interesting finish. And the final group is Group H. Zenit St. Petersburg, they are qualified, probably the most informed side in the Champions League aside of the big guns. Played 5, won 5, 15 points there through group winners. But interestingly, Ghent from Belgium, little Ghent, they are now second on 7 points, a point ahead of Valencia. And then Lyon all the way back on 1 point. They can't qualify for anything in Europe this season anymore. They're gone. But it'll be interesting to see who gets that second place behind Zenit. Ghent host Zenit. Zenit in form, but could take their eye off the ball there. Would you expect Valencia to win against Lyon, and would you then say it comes down to how good Ghent are against Zenit?
Yeah, I think it's the Ghent-Zenit game. I would give Ghent the edge if it wasn't for the fact that Lyon are in such bad form. It's just their performance in Europe has been so bad, not necessarily in the league, and the fact that they have nothing left to play for. I'm not sure why they would risk any of their players in an away game that means nothing for them, basically. So you would think, stranger things happen, but you'd have to back Valencia to win there. So Ghent definitely needs something out of the Zenit game.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. I'm quite free to say I think Lyon probably will have their eye off the ball when that game comes around. So yeah, I'm going to back Ghent to get through, which will be a massive achievement for them, has to be said. And you know that the poor buggers will probably draw Bayern Munich next round. So bless them. I'm sure they won't mind. It's all about the experience. So that draws a line into the Champions League then for this week and for another week. Let's move it on to tonight's Europa League games. As usual, we're going to just pick out a select couple because there's so many groups, so many permutations, and so much going on. So let's just have a quick flick through tonight. Let's start with Dortmund. They lost in one of the early fixtures to Krasnodar. Just explain to the listeners where that leaves Dortmund in terms of their group on this one, John.
Well, that actually puts them joint points, both on 10 points, Krasnodar and Dortmund, but now Dortmund are behind Krasnodar in the group because of the head-to-head brawling. Dortmund, they didn't exactly take a weaker team, but some of the big names weren't there, like Aubameyang or Marco Reus and a few others, but they still had Mkhitaryan and Ilkay Gundogan. Hummels played as well, I think, so it was probably a surprise defeat. So it will come down to the last game in that group to see who finishes top. I think at this point Dortmund probably aren't too concerned because I think they would fancy themselves against pretty much any other team in the competition, and even those that may be dropping down from the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be an interesting one. I don't think Dortmund expected to go out there and lose, and it was a second minute Mamaev penalty goal as well. That penalty goal sounds like hockey penalty, which got the goal in 2 minutes. It's a long old time to hold out, but
Yeah,
hold out
I
they
mean,
did.
they hit the post a few times and they had some good chances. They just couldn't finish. Perhaps maybe ruining not taking their best strike force. But again, shows what you have to do in terms of squad rotation and the difference in quality between, say, your first choice striker and your backup.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What are your favourite players? Antonio Candreva. He got himself back into a bit of form tonight with a goal for Lazio in their 3-1 win over Dnipro. Bit of a stat on, or bit of a fact you've got on Dnipro?
Yeah, last season's finalists now out of the competition. The final was between them and Seville, wasn't it?
Mm.
Who, of course, themselves could maybe not even end up in the Europa League. So, come round for the next round of group games for the Champions League, if Seville finish bottom, that will be both finalists out of the competition, which be quite a surprise because Seville have normally done very well, but Lazio doing really very well in the competition. Top of their group, already qualified and winners of their group. Decent performance from them. Nice for Kandreva as well because he's really needed that because he hasn't been in the greatest form. Goals for Djordjevic and a deflection from Parolo as well. Deflected goal for him. So got to rotate, got a few more players, some minutes under the belt that they needed, and a decent result going into the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, and keeping it Italian themed. Basel coming from 2 goals to 0 down at home to Fiorentina. Bernardeschi, player that I've mentioned on the Hipsters pod, that I quite like the look of. He got 2 goals tonight. What position does that leave Fiorentina in? Are they still bossing that group?
Yeah, they are still actually because of that. They are 3 points behind Basel at the moment. They can still go through. You would expect them to as well. The other two teams, although they're both 5 points on both on 5 points, only two behind, but you would still think it's Basel and Fiorentina definitely going through. A decent fight back from Basel was Fiorentina. Actually, they went down to 10 men. They actually scored the second goal after being down to 10 men, but Basel came back into it and got the 2 goals back. Obviously, Basel actually quite an experienced side in Europe and normally Champions League regulars as well. So actually, in the end, probably a decent result for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere, a couple of other notable results. Anderlecht winning away in Monaco. Probably be seen as a little bit of a surprise. Gile and Achimpong getting the goals there, which sees Anderlecht in a very firm position in their group now. Spurs also winning away in Karabag by a goal to nil. Harry Kane scoring the winner there. Schalke got a very late winner at home to Applewell. Very late winner. They absolutely battered them for 90 minutes, but a late Eric Choupo-Moting goal, for the getting the result for Schalke in the 86th minute. They did actually miss a penalty from Dennis Iogo in the last minute as well. Also noticeable, AZ Alkmaar, they're gone, having lost at home to Partizan Belgrade. And we should touch as well on Athletic Club or Bilbao, whichever you prefer. I'm sure Tom will be listening. A certain Spanish striker getting 2 late goals to turn around a game in Germany tonight.
Yeah, Augsburg been in pretty bad form in the Bundesliga. In Europe, they've had their couple of decent results and going 1-0 down and then taking the lead 2-1. Looked like it was all going well for them, but something to cheer about for the fans. And then Aritz Adariz, who I hope I've said his name right, two goals in the space of 3 minutes for Athletic to win it 3-2. So a really good comeback in that game. It shows why they're top of their group at the moment and obviously already qualified through to the next round.
Yeah, absolutely. Another team that haven't qualified, though, and will be certainly not qualifying, Celtic. They lost at home to Ajax by 2 goals to 1 in the same group. Fenerbahce winning 2-0 away at Mulder. Pressure on Ronnie Dyler, I think it's fair to say now.
Yeah, we talked about the Scottish League, Premier League, on this week's Hipsters pod, and although they are top in the league in Scotland, some of their performances haven't been the greatest. They've been really disappointing in Europe. Obviously, the Celtic fans want them to be in the Champions League, and if not, at least put up some sort of an effort in the Europa League. And they've been really poor this season. I know they didn't have the easiest of groups because obviously Ajax, Fenerbahce, and Molde, who obviously undermanaged by Solskjaer, doing very well in the group, but they've just been very poor in Europe this year. And Ronnie Dyler may not be long for that job.
No, I think you're quite right on that one. A final couple of results to pick up on. Liverpool coming from behind to beat a much improved Bordeaux side. They were extremely good on the night. The bits and pieces I saw, Henri Saivet getting the goal for Bordeaux, but James Milner's penalty and Christian Benteke's goal getting the points for Liverpool. Rather comedic moment with Simon Mignolet. I'll say no more. Just do that one. Have a look. It's quite fun. But that was also quite easy. But yeah, Bordeaux much improved, but they do exit the competition after that result. And elsewhere, Club Brugge losing at home at Napoli, who just continue to look absolutely invincible in this competition. They just keep winning. Vlad Chiriches getting the winner on 41 minutes there. Villarreal getting a late 1-0 win over Rapid Vienna. Bruno with a goal on 78 minutes. Sporting Braga as well, coming from behind to win 2-1 at home to Lovrenc. And Michy Batshuayi, that boy again. What would Marseille do without him? The answer is probably lose, but they didn't lose because he scored tonight. He got an 88th minute winner for Marseille at home to Groningen, which was a result Marseille and head coach Michel very much needed. So what we'll do now is just give you a heads up on who's qualified and who hasn't. John, do you want to give us a list of who have qualified and who have won their groups in the Europa League thus far?
Yeah, sure. So this is the complicated bit where we go through. So Athletic, Basel, Lazio and Napoli have all qualified as group winners already. And then we have Braga, Dortmund, Krasnodar, Liverpool, Molde, Rapid Vienna, Schalke, Sparta Praha, Tottenham and Villarreal are all qualified as well. The list of teams that can still qualify is almost as long as the ones that are out of contention, as is always the case with the Europa League. But there are a few sort of interesting groups and things that can still happen. I mean, Group B, you have Liverpool currently top on 9, but FC Sion on 8, and FC Reuben on 5. So, although Liverpool obviously are through, it'll be interesting to see again who finishes top there. As we said earlier, Dortmund possibly top or second in their group. And then the other one I really wanted to talk about actually was the Tottenham's group. They are through, but they have a game against Monaco coming up. Now, Tottenham obviously through, and with the way the Premier League gets busy sort of this time of year, they may put out a weaker side, which gives Monaco a chance to possibly get squeezed through in second place. Anderlecht are at home to Karabag, who you probably expect Anderlecht to win, but they still need to go out and perform on the night and get that performance correct. So Monaco's still got a chance of squeezing through there in what turned out to be quite a tight group. And Sparta Praha could throw a few surprises, because I think most people would have picked Schalke to have won their group quite easily. So they've still got a chance of jumping Schalke to first place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should just again sort of mention that Bordeaux, Celtic, and as you said, Dnipro, all sides that can't qualify from their respective groups now. So that's some quite big names. I think it's fair to say that are going to go crashing out at the early stages. Rosenborg, another of the sort of famous sides of old, and indeed Groningen, who would have fancied their chances in a fairly average group, but they have also bitten the dust as well. And as you say, one of Monaco and Anderlecht are going to crash out, as are Augsburg and AZ Alkmaar as well. So it's shaping up to be a very interesting competition. And of course, the Champions League will shake its dust into this competition once the groups are turned upside down as well. We'll get some teams dropping down for the Champions League. It'll be a very interesting run to see where they go. So it kind of draws a line under our coverage for this week with regards to the games. Let's just have a brief discussion about where we sit after these games on terms of sort of potential winners. Champions League again. Your thoughts? Is there any? Have you got anything different than your Barcelona, your Bayern Munich's? I suppose they're the big two. Who's maybe the potential challengers for those two?
No, I mean I think the last time we did this, I think I pipped for Bayern at the time, just because I think Messi was out injured in that period. But yeah, it would be one of those two. But the only teams I could see possibly challenging, you would say Real Madrid, just because of their forward line, because you know they can score goals, but they seem so inconsistent at the back, and the way Barca took them apart, you would question that. PSG again, if it's their first 11, then maybe on the night have got a chance. After that, I can't see any other team that has their quality from front to back in team. The question mark over Bayern Munich, more so than Barcelona, is that every year they win the league so early in Germany that they don't seem to be motivated when those the so-called more difficult sort of games in the knockout stage of the Champions League begin, sort of from February onwards. So that would maybe be the only blemish against them, and something that Pep Guardiola really wants to rectify.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only other dark horse I can think is possibly Juventus. And don't get it wrong, there's nothing to suggest their league form that they'll get to the final again like last year. But Italian teams, Champions League, you just never know. They've just got a bit of a habit of getting things right. So keep an eye on that. What about your thoughts on the Europa League? Are we again? Is it too early to pick a winner given who we've got potentially coming down from the Champions League? In fact, while we've got the opportunity, who is now looking likely to come down from the Champions League into the Europa League from each group?
It's difficult to say who exactly is going to come down, because obviously you can have, if we just go back through the groups, you've got Arsenal or a possibility, which then would be a team who you would expect could win or perhaps should win the Europa League. But it all depends on how seriously they take it, because English teams tend not to. Then you've got maybe Shakhtar. Then obviously Man United, again, we don't know whether they'll be in the competition. They would be one who would probably want to win it, so it's a chance of some silverware. Gladbach are a team that could drop into it, if not Seville, who are a team who've got a history of winning it, especially recently. Leverkusen, Roma, so there's so many to list off of potential really big sides and clubs that could drop into the competition. Of the ones in it at the moment, I think you would have to say that Dortmund and Napoli are probably the two front-running teams in terms of form and the way they're performing in their own leagues and in Europe. Napoli actually the most informed side in Europe at the moment, but you can never discount a side like Liverpool, especially now under Jurgen Klopp, who knows European football and is starting to change the way they play. Tottenham as well are in great form, so they'll definitely be within a shout. So I think it's one of those things where you have to see what teams drop in and who gets drawn against who, and then you can get a clearer idea of it.
Yeah, it's definitely shaping up to be a rather interesting finish to those group stages, which of course we will be across as always. And our next pod indeed is scheduled for, is it 2 weeks? 2 weeks time,
Yeah,
is it, the final group games? We'll be back for then with another Satchel. But just to round things off tonight, we've got 2 late questions come into the pod, which we will answer. It's probably one each, really. I'll give you Brendan Keynes. He wants to know, in the Champions League group stages, who would you say were the biggest underachievers? And who are the biggest overachievers? Good question.
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. Well, sort of going by group, it may sound a little bit harsh, but I'd actually say Shakhtar have a little bit underachieved. I know they've got Real Madrid and PSG in their group, which obviously makes it difficult. But I just think some of the performances and the players they've got at that club, obviously I know they're in difficulties at the moment, the fact they don't play in their home stadium. I think sometimes they could definitely have performed better. Man United as well, who you would look at, with all due respect to PSV and to Wolfsburg, you would expect Man United, even in the transition that they're going through, to have been performing better. Arsenal are also certainly a team that have definitely underperformed. As for overperformers, Zenit, perhaps. The other 3 teams in their group, not of the greatest quality, but I don't think anyone would have said Zenit would be, perfect 5 wins out of 5 for the group they're in. And maybe, well, I don't know really, can you call Bayern Munich or Barcelona overperformers ever? It's just the way they're playing at the moment. And actually, one other underperformer I would say actually is Seville. After obviously watching quite a bit of them, well, at least in Europe this season, and I know Tom's spoken about it a few times that their performance has been kind of up and down. Just the consistency they've had in Europe at times over the last few seasons, and the way they play football, I just expected a bit more from them, and they haven't really shown it this season.
I think that's fair to say, and I'd probably just chuck. I don't know if you. I don't think you mentioned Dynamo Kiev.
No, I didn't actually. No, yeah.
Underachiever. I think they probably would be not so much. They're a big European past nation of. They're well known, shall we say? But I just thought that they've overperformed. I didn't expect to see them sort of this high up in the group, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and maybe a little nod. I know we said earlier, but to Ghent as well. Very, very impressive for such a small club.
Yeah, they're massive
Yeah.
overachievers, and even the Kazakhstani
Astana,
chaps
yeah,
as
very
well.
very good for a first showing in a competition that, I mean, when they were first announced, I'll be honest, I'd never even heard of them or even knew there was such a thing as a Kazakhstani Premier League, which I suppose is a bit ignorant of me. But I've been really impressed with their performance in their stadium and the sort of the welcome and the show they kind of put on there. It's been really welcoming. It's nice to see that when you get new teams in a competition.
Yeah, agree. I don't think there's many that had heard of them in fairness, so you can be forgiven on that one. I certainly was in the same bracket. Our final question this evening comes from PG, excuse me, PG underscore Nez. It's probably one for me, but I'll give you a shout on it as well. It was he said, should the French clubs withdraw from playing in Europe, PSG apart? Um,
A
you've been
little bit
a
mean.
bit cheeky there, but I take his point. I think it's fair to say it's been a pretty poor showing. I mean, St Etienne are bucking the trend maybe in the Europa League, and Marseille and Monaco still have a hope, but Lyon have been terrible. Let's be perfectly honest. And PSG, with the money they have and the things they have at their disposal, you would expect with that squad for them to be qualifying at the very minimum. What's your sort of thoughts on the limited amount you've seen in the French league? I mean, do you think there's a massive difference in quality?
There's such a gulf between what PSG, not what they can just spend, but their performances they put out on the pitch, and obviously that does come a lot of it down to money. But the other clubs in France then have to find another way to be able to chase them down, or build a squad that can challenge in some fashion to them. Because I'm sure I read a stat today that Lyon, despite being second, are closer to the relegation zone in points than they are to PSG, who are above them in first place.
Yep, bang
Which
on.
is an amazing stat to read. When I look at clubs like, obviously I support Gladbach, who are a big team and have a big reputation, like a team like Lyon does, and who's got a big history, but they don't have the money that Bayern Munich does, so they have to do things where they develop youth and get players very cheap, like Lars Stindl, who's been one of our sort of revelation players this season. They got for €3 million, and I think you have to develop and change the way you structure your club and how you bring through players. Obviously, it's difficult if you develop a real talent because they're always going to get snatched up by the bigger teams. But then you can use that money to reinvest, and I think that's the way that the French system will have to go, because it's getting to the point where it's starting to look sadly like what's happened in Scottish football, where it is a one-team league and everything else below it is so poor. And if it wasn't for the fact that PSG weren't in the Champions League, I think at some point it would actually start to affect them as well, because the only reason they keep their level so high is because they still are competing against top teams from around Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other problem that the French league has at the moment is that even if PSG were to somehow win the Champions League potentially, or indeed go to the semi-finals again, there is a bit of an element of, well, they're not really the French league. They're not really a French team. They're kind of assembled with vast millions, etc., etc. So I know a lot of the other teams in Liga look at PSG as if they are a different side, almost the outsiders of the league. So in a weird way, I think even if they won it, they probably wouldn't get the credit that French football certainly wouldn't get the credit that they might think it deserves. So they're kind of onto a bit of a hiding, I think, on that one. But one thing's for sure, French sides need to have a good hard look at how things are going in European football, because the coefficient will start closing if they don't, and they will certainly not have the positions or the places they want to have available each year for
Yeah,
their
that
teams.
that is a
So
real issue. The coefficients. I think that's the problem with not taking the Europa League seriously enough. When you see how
yeah,
Spain and Italy take it much more seriously, um,
yeah.
and the FAs of their respective leagues actually help the teams with arranging their games at the right time. So it's easier for them, and there's
Yeah.
less time. More time between travelling for games and stuff. So that definitely helps them, because it makes getting into Europe easier for those leagues, which is something the English FA perhaps don't do anything about and help.
No, I agree, and especially two massive sides of yesteryear in St Etienne and Marseille, two real European powerhouses of prior years. You would think St Etienne, I think, probably arguably have put in strong sides and are looking to try and progress in the Europa League, and they've got to be looking at the competitions like this and thinking, well, we can't win the league, so let's try and finish as high up in the league as we can and go on and run in Europa League. So it's a must for teams like that. So two really good questions there. Sorry we left it late, but we're never sure how much time we'll get on these, so we didn't want to overflood the questions tonight. But that pretty much wraps it up for this week's Satchel for match day 5 of the Champions League and Europa League. Two quick things to plug. We have an interview coming up next week, which we'll give you some more details on Monday, but it was conducted by a chap called Jason Schrader, who's a personal friend of mine and John's, who works for the Carolina Railhawks in the NASL American divisions football, so it's basically the league underneath the MLS. He was able to give me a really insightful interview this past week, which we'll be making available this time next week. So this time, sort of Thursday next week, we'll pop that up for you to have a listen. And also, just to plug our podcast, as usual, comes in on a Monday. We record Monday night. It's usually available on a Tuesday, so we'll be recording for Monday. So if you've got any questions, do give us a shout. And the final thing is just to mention iTunes reviews. It helps us to spread our message, helps us to get our content out there and give people an idea of who we are and what we do. So if you do like this podcast, if you like us, if there's anything at all you like about us, then just drop us an iTunes review. Obviously, 5 stars would be lovely. Thank you very much. But whatever you think we justify, that'd be great. The more reviews we get, simply the more audience we can reach. So tell your friends, drop us an iTunes review. We appreciate it. But that's it from us for tonight. So thank you very much to John for joining me this evening.
Kris.
And we shall see you on Monday. And in the meantime, as always, keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy. And we will speak to you on Monday.